Welcome to the online version of our Shared Responsibility Committee Structure presentation. My name is Erin Osteen, and I want to thank you for your interest in the committee structure process. Today we are going to go over the proposed shared responsibility philosophy that embodies the four pieces of the puzzle, which are transparency, empowerment, engagement, and inclusiveness. You should have already downloaded the committee structure recommendation input form. You will be prompted as we go through the PowerPoint presentation to fill out this form as we go along for the various recommendations. Our ad hoc committee has been meeting on a regular basis for the past 10 months. The ad hoc committee was formed to investigate the committee's structure process and is composed of myself, Francine Costa, Julie Kripe, Denise English, Sue Fagan, Christy Lyle, and Jerry Tully. At this time, I'm going to go over the process that we have undergone in making the recommendations that you will see here. The first step in the process was an action on behalf of the Service Excellence Committee, where a recommendation was sent to Planning Council to investigate the committee structure process. As a result, Planning Council has created this ad hoc committee. The second step was to develop a survey for faculty and staff asking questions about the existing committee structure. And from that survey, we received over 102 responses. The next step that we did was to carry out 6 comparative studies in an effort to gather qualitative data. And I will talk more about these 6 studies on the next slide. The fourth step was, after we gathered all of the qualitative and quantitative data, all the information was thematically coded to show what emergent trends surfaced so that we can ensure that we were making recommendations based on the data. It was very important to us that we made sure that the data did the talking. The next step that we did was to revise the existing committee directory. This was done to make sure that the directory was inclusive of the entire college community. In keeping with this idea of shared governance, it's really important that everyone is involved in committees because this is where the majority of the decisions are made regarding the campus. The next step was to make 11 recommendations for improvement, and again, these recommendations were based strictly on the thematically coded information from the qualitative studies. And we will be talking about these 11 recommendations in further detail in the other slides. It's also important to note that none of these recommendations are set in stone. That is part of the reason why we are presenting this information today, is it's really important to us that we get your input and your feedback from these recommendations, because it's our goal to then make improvements on the recommendations based on your input that you're going to be including on the form. The next step is where we are here today. With your help, we are hoping to garner your input, which will then be thematically coded to help guide us in our final recommendations. The final step is for us to make presentations to Planning Council and as well as expanded Cabinet. And then finally, the recommendations will go forward to Cabinet for approval after all the input has been aggregated and put to use. Here is an outline of the 6 comparative studies that we did do. The first one was the Service Excellence Obstacles Survey, an analysis of the current membership roster, the committee survey with 102 responses, a qualitative analysis of 20 other institutions, open forums, and then finally analysis of job descriptions. And I've been talking a lot about shared responsibility, but what exactly is shared responsibility? A term that you might be more familiar with is shared governance. What we really premised our definition of shared responsibility around is that it is really important that everyone get involved in the committee structure process. It's an important cause, and like I mentioned before, a lot of decisions are made at the committee structure level. So it's really important that everyone has a voice and that everyone's opinion matters. And this is a pretty powerful statement, so I'd just like to read it. It's a collaborative decision-making and planning process by which trustees, students, faculty, staff, and administrators work as a community of colleagues to advance the mission, vision, and values of LSCC. And to take it one step further, we really created an entire framework around this idea of shared responsibility. And some of the benefits that can be associated with shared responsibility is empowerment, increased leadership opportunity, and increased breadth of knowledge for the college. And I know for me personally, in working in the foundation department here on campus, I was not as familiar with the student services side of the campus. And I know by being able to be involved in committees such as planning council, I was really able to have a better understanding of the student services side, which in turn allowed me to better serve the community and to better serve students when I was asked questions about this facet of the college. So the first recommendation, and we're going to ask that you please turn now to your committee recommendation input form. The question is, can you commit to the definition of shared responsibility and the aligned framework? And again, we're going to have you put this information down on your input form. So 1, yes, 2, no.
Hi, this is Denise, and I'm going to talk about committee structure. An important part of the work that we did was to review our current structure. Although we're not recommending any changes in that structure, we did spend some time defining the difference between councils, planning committees, and operational committees. At the top, we have President's Cabinet, which is a decision-making body, an expanded cabinet, which reviews and discusses issues and makes recommendations to President's Cabinet. Then we have the two councils, planning and administrative. Councils are comprised of representatives from all areas of the institution. They're more visionary than planning committees, and they consider and make recommendations for critical institution-level issues. They also have an informational component since members report back to their constituents. The 10 planning committees, all of which report to Planning Council, deal with specific strategic issues in a certain area. They conduct research and carry out planning for institutional improvement. These may have a broad or narrower membership depending on the function. And then of course we have the 9 operational committees that deal with even more specific operational processes relating to carrying out essential functions for daily operations in various areas of the college. We did have a couple of recommendations related to the committee structure. To reinstate 2 committees, both of which existed earlier. Recommendation 2 was to reinstate the SPD committee. This is the Staff and Program Development Fund that currently provides funding for professional development for all full-time and part-time college employees. It also provides funding for program development, either improving current programs or development of new programs. This recommendation was brought forward by Cabinet in an effort to include all areas of the college in deciding how these important funds are spent. Recommendation 3 was to reinstate the Institutional Effectiveness Planning Committee. This committee existed previously, was repurposed and became the SAC's editing team, and no longer functioned as a planning committee for institutional effectiveness issues. This was brought forward by the PI office to make sure SACS is happy, to ensure consistency, and to involve representatives from all areas of the college in the institutional effectiveness process. Reinstating both committees was supported at our first open forum by 83% and 86% respectively. And due to a clear operational need for each of them, the recommendations were approved and the committees were reinstated.
Hi, this is Francine, and I'm going to talk about the committee timeline. The committee timeline will start in May and end in April. The PI office will announce the openings each committee has, and any employee that wishes to be a part of that committee should fill out the form, have their supervisor sign off on it, and return it to the PI office. In August, the committee assignments for the upcoming year will be posted, and the committee chairs will contact all the members to set the frequency of the meetings, what time the meetings will be, and what framework there will be. The committee work will begin in September, and in April, evaluations will be done on all involved in the committee via involvement worksheet, and any changes will be reported to the PI office. Recommendation number 4 is question. Do you think the timeline should be adopted as presented or further revised? Please fill out your white forms and answer yes, 1 for yes, or no for 2. Now I'd like to discuss how you can be selected for a committee. Currently, there are 3 ways. Early on in our work as a committee, we did an analysis of all of our job descriptions to see whose responsibilities covered being on a committee. The employee, it can be a constituent in the area and is required to be a member of the committee, or you can volunteer to serve. So as part of the survey sent out, one of the questions asked, how should people be selected for a committee? The data results to the questions show 67% said via volunteer, 46% said via supervisor appointment, and 33% said via nominated or voted on. Recommendation number 5. Your question is, how should members be selected for committees? 1 for volunteer, 2 for supervisor appointment, 3 for nominated or voted on, or 4 other. If you choose to use other, please indicate on your white form what you would like that to be.
Hello, this is committee member Julie Kripe. As an ad hoc committee, one area we focused on was the defining of committee roles and their respective responsibilities. Supervisors. Although supervisors don't serve in their capacity on committees as such, they do play a very important role. Data showed that there are whole departments where no one was on a committee, and it also showed that employees felt they were being discouraged or even blocked from serving on committees by their supervisor. Therefore, a supervisor's role is to encourage and promote committee involvement. They need to ensure that their employees are participating in shared responsibility, acting responsibly, and serving. Scribe. From the data gathered via the analysis, communication of committee activities, agenda, and minutes were a resounding concern. The role of a scribe is to improve communication, post committee minutes to the website, and to promote transparency. Resource members. Resource members are an important part of committees. They act in an advisory capacity, are responsible for staying current on committee activities, and share information with their constituents. They represent their discipline. Resource members should solicit issues and concerns from their constituents and share those with the committee. Chair, co-chair. From the comparative studies conducted, comments emerged related to the duties of a chair and co-chair. These comments included statements like, chairs are not respectful of people's suggestions, their opinions, and of committee member time, specifically meeting starting and stopping times. Persons also expressed that they went to look for meeting minutes and they were not posted. This led to our committee defining chair and co-chair roles. These positions share similar duties, including preparing meeting materials and agendas, the posting of agendas and minutes, and overall ensuring transparency of the committee work. The chair-elect. As a means of mentoring an incoming chairperson, a new role of chair-elect is being recommended. Why is this position being recommended? Data showed that people want change in leadership positions. They want opportunities to lead and be challenged. Committee role responsibilities. The same themes emerged from the quantitative data. Employees seek to have new energy on committees. Typical responses included, like the one shown on this slide, including feelings that the same leadership remains in place and the same people are being selected to move into chair positions. A chair-elect role would provide an opportunity for others to develop their leadership skills through mentoring. Chair-elect policy. Recommendations focus on mentoring and time qualifications. The chair-elect should serve on a committee for 1 year prior to becoming the chair-elect and serve in the role for a minimum of 1 year and not to exceed 2 years. The chair-elect position allows for the development of leadership opportunities. Recommendation 6. Do you support the recommendation to add the chair-elect role to all operational and planning committees? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Please fill out your committee recommendation input form at this time, and we ask for your suggestions and input on the form as well.
Hi, this is Christy. I'm going to now start with committee role responsibilities for voting members. And part of our work included really outlining and defining what a voting member's responsibilities are to their committee. And you can see just some highlighted things there in terms of responsible and sharing equally in the committee work, following service excellence standards. But one of the most important things that we want to focus in here relates to our shared responsibility definition, and that is that you as a voting member represent a constituency. And following that role as the constituent means that you go back to your constituents, you ask for input. You are not just representing yourself as the voting member, but really the people that you represent or the constituents that you represent. One of the things that did come up in our survey that we did and the other data that we collected really indicated that there was a very strong desire for term limits for members, voting members. And just to show you a little bit of that qualitative data, you can see some of the typical responses that thematically emerged. I believe there should be, a time limit. Responsibilities for committee work should be shared equally, necessitating term limits. The same people seem to be on numerous committees, and again, I think what people were thinking is that term limits would help to be more of an equalizer in that. Part of our data also included a request for what they thought in terms of how many years they would like in a term. So if an individual voting member would serve for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And you can see by the data there that 2 was the winner of the term limits with 39 at 38%. So if you look now at your white sheets and look at recommendation 7A, and 7A's question is, do you agree that every planning and operational committee should have term limits for voting members? And if you would indicate yes or no, and then put what type of description or details that you would like if you have any. Recommendation 7B, what term limits in years should we put in place? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or other? Again, if you would take time to put on your white sheets what your vote is there, 1, 2, or 3, and if you do put other, please make sure you define what that other would be. In an effort to respond to the collected data, one of the things that the stakeholders really wanted to happen was to really have everybody serve on committees, and developed a point structure for serving on committees and subcommittees in an effort to help hold everyone accountable to the point structure concept. Data from that indicates clearly that not everyone is serving on committees. Erin talked about one of the data collection methods that we did, and we did do an evaluation of our full directory from last year, and we looked and noticed how many people really aren't serving on committees. 22 of the full-time faculty do not serve on any committees. 27 of the professional administrative staff do not serve on committees. 9 of professional and crafts. 13 of the technical staff. 12 of the managerial staff do not serve on any committees. So a total of 84 employees, or 36% of our entire population, do not serve on any committees. And when we talk about a definition of shared responsibility for shared governance, obviously we're really not engaged fully, where 36% or 84 employees are not engaged in our shared governance process. 172 employees are on 1 or 2 committees, 29 are on 3 or 4, 15 are on 5 to 8 committees, and 5 serve on 9 to 12 committees. Just to give you another feel for the different types of data that we looked at, we also did see that people were frustrated with the fact that everyone was serving on a committee. Care is not taken to rotate folks throughout committee assignments. It seems that those who get involved and attend meetings regularly are asked more. There was also an underlying theme around the fact that those who didn't serve well or didn't show up to meetings and didn't really pull their full weight while being on a committee was frustrating to people. So therefore, if you're not a good committee member, you aren't held responsible and you don't have to be on committees. And a lot of people talked about the fact that they would like to see more people and that they would like it to be more equitable. So recommendation 8 is based on this point structure for committees and this concept around points. Based on that, we put forward a few different concepts around that point structure just to give you an idea of what it would look like. So all employees after their first year of service are required annually to earn a minimum of a particular number of points through committee participation. And of course that would have to be determined. Employees should not exceed a certain number of points in 1 year. Again, holding back people, for example, those 5 people on 9 to 12 committees taking up all the committee appointments. Points can be earned for serving on different types of committees, for example, the 50th Anniversary Committee, or being on a resources search for a new employee, or subcommittees, or ad hocs. Those employees having unsatisfactory performance ratings cannot participate in committees for the annual term, and then the points would be waived. Currently in our structure, that is the case for employees who do have an unsatisfactory performance rating. They are not able to participate in the committees. The point structure would be based on hours of work required for a meeting, the frequency of the meeting, the duration of a meeting, and it's determined annually by the committee chair and the committee itself. And so just to give you an idea, we did go ahead and we collaboratively developed with the committee chair a point structure based on this rubric. And what we were doing was looking at ways or criteria to determine the point structure itself. And you can see here that we looked at, if you look at the criteria running along the left-hand side, we're looking at frequency of meetings, duration, hours worked outside of the meeting, and then running along the top is the points. So based on, for example, on that first criteria, 1 hour or less, 3 to 5 hours, 5 to 7 as an example. So recommendation 8's question, and going back to your white form, would a point structure bring value to shared responsibility at LSCC, or would you like to see it put into place? This is also something that faculty have talked about liking, because in the faculty rank and promotion portfolio, it does lend itself very well to a point structure so that faculty get points for their particular committee and service work. So go ahead and answer that question, 1 for yes and 2 for no. And if you do have any comments or would like to make suggestions for changes or a different way to have a point structure, please indicate that on your form. The other thing that was brought about by our surveys and data collection and coding of qualitative data was the fact that committees should have some type of evaluation structure. And so what we did was we've been working on rubrics which would also have to be reviewed more. These are draft only, but this is looking at a voting member and what are they supposed to do, and are they really working hard in that committee and serving their constituents? The other thing would be then to also evaluate the chairperson. And you can see here the rubric that was put together for the chair. Now remember, these particular criteria in the rubric follow very closely to the responsibilities and roles that we've outlined in the manual itself that you saw in earlier slides. So recommendation 9, back to the white form again. Question: do you think it would be beneficial if evaluations are shared with supervisors? Yes for 1 and no for 2. And please again make some comments if you'd like to there. Recommendation 10 and 11 actually came from our open forum. So we only had 9 recommendations before the open forum, but due to the overwhelming feedback we got and the way the data indicated, we did add 2 recommendations, and that is number 10 and 11. So number 10 is that the recommendation was that new employee orientation will also emphasize the importance of shared responsibility and provide the committee manual to the new employee, which would really then help define and make them acclimated to how the policies around committees really works. And we'd like you to vote on that, recommendation 10. Should the new employee orientation include learning outcomes for committee involvement? Yes for 1, no for 2, and again, comments if you have them. Recommendation 11. One of the things that did come forward was that our chairs need to have some training on how to facilitate collaborative meetings and improve in the skills in which they work through conflict resolution, team building, even following Robert's Rules of Order, and in some cases leading with respect. So it was then determined that maybe we should have a type of training for our chairs. Now, if that chair-elect concept is approved, all chair-elects would also be required to complete the course before assuming any type of role as a chair of any particular committee. So once again, let's go back to that white form and vote again. The question is, do you think it would be beneficial to train committee chairs? Yes for 1 and no for 2. And then just go ahead and indicate if you have any other opinions about what that training should include or any thoughts around that. And what we'd really like you to do at this point is, now that you've completed that form, if you could please email or interoffice hard copy your completed white form, as we called it, or the committee structure recommendation form, to Erin Osteen. Her email is in the email directory, and we really do thank you for your time and for your input. And it is really important that we hear from everyone and that everyone has a voice.